Beyond the Gates recap for October 30, 2025. Leslie treated Ted to a non-trick and Knight Tyrell rode to his sister's honor. The latest episode of Beyond the Gates delivered yet another blend of cunning moves, emotional reckonings, and small-town drama wrapped in one stormy night that no one saw coming. From Leslie's cold precision to Ted's surprising vulnerability and Tyrell's fiery defense of family honor, this episode took every secret brewing behind closed doors and gave it a dangerous edge. The episode opened with the annual costume gala at Fairview Hall, where the town's most influential figures gathered under chandeliers and whispered judgments. Leslie arrived without warning, slipping through the crowd in an understated black gown that commanded more attention than any costume could. Ted, still reeling from the events of the previous night, was unprepared for her calm demeanor. Their encounter wasn't the trick-or-treat most expected. It was a calculated unveiling. Leslie treated Ted to something far more unsettling than a playful Halloween prank. She exposed the truth about the deal he struck with Carlton and the missing ledger that's been haunting their circle for weeks. What began as a friendly conversation over wine turned into a chess match of power, each move designed to draw blood without breaking composure. When Leslie slid an envelope across the table, the room seemed to freeze. Inside were photos of Ted meeting with the same investors he claimed to have severed ties with. Ted's jaw tightened, his eyes flashing with the kind of guilt that doesn't come from fear, but from realization. Leslie wasn't there to humiliate him. She was there to make him choose sides. In that moment, it became clear that Ted's loyalty was the currency of the night, and Leslie intended to buy it at any cost. Across town, Tyrell was living a very different story. His sister, Alana, found herself at the center of a vicious rumor started by people who couldn't stand to see her success. When word reached Tyrell that she'd been ambushed at the cafe, the knight in him took over. No armor, no sword, just a brother's raw instinct to defend. His arrival at the scene was nothing short of cinematic. As the confrontation escalated, Tyrell's voice carried across the courtyard, silencing gossip and fear alike. He didn't need to raise his hand. His presence alone was enough to make the culprits back down. But it wasn't just about defending Alana's name. Tyrell's actions symbolized the deeper loyalty that still exists among the families of Fairview. In a town where secrets are traded like currency, standing up for truth has become the ultimate rebellion. Back at Fairview Hall, the gala took a darker turn as whispers spread about Ted's meeting with Leslie. Carlton, ever the opportunist, watched from the balcony with an expression that betrayed both amusement and concern. He knew Leslie's moves were never random, and the sight of her sharing a private drink with Ted meant something more strategic was unfolding. When Leslie exited the hall, she left behind a trail of speculation that set off a chain reaction. Within minutes, Nicole cornered Ted near the stairwell, demanding to know what Leslie wanted. Ted, visibly shaken, deflected her questions, insisting it was nothing more than business. But his trembling hands told another story. The irony of the situation didn't escape anyone. Ted, the man known for controlling every narrative, had just lost control of his own. Meanwhile, outside in the garden, Leslie took a deep breath, her reflection mirrored in the dark fountain water. Her expression softened, revealing a flicker of sadness. What she did tonight wasn't easy, it was necessary. Ted's betrayal had cost her more than reputation, it had cost her trust. Now, she was reclaiming it one revelation at a time. Inside the mansion, the lights flickered as thunder rolled across the horizon. The night wasn't done revealing its truths. In a quiet corner, Tyrell finally found Alana, still shaken but standing tall. Their embrace was brief but powerful. A silent promise that no rumor, no manipulation, and no whispered lie could ever fracture their bond. When he told her what he'd done, Alana didn't scold him. She simply nodded, understanding that in Fairview, survival often comes cloaked in defiance. Elsewhere, Ted retreated to the study, desperate to piece together a strategy before morning. He replayed Leslie's words in his mind, each syllable a reminder of how far he'd fallen from grace. Once the town's golden negotiator, he now found himself cornered by the very woman he underestimated. The irony stung, but there was something else underneath: admiration. Leslie had played the game better than anyone, and Ted couldn't decide if he hated her for it or admired her completely. As the clock struck midnight, Carlton entered the study uninvited, smirking like a man who already knew too much. "Rough night?" he asked, swirling a glass of whiskey. Ted didn't answer. The two men stood in silence, the tension between them thicker than the cigar smoke that lingered in the air. Finally, Ted spoke. "She's not bluffing this time." Carlton's smirk faded. For the first time, the puppeteer seemed uncertain. "Then," he said slowly, "we'd better start rewriting the rules." Meanwhile, Leslie was already one step ahead. Driving away from Fairview Hall, she made a single phone call to someone whose name hasn't been spoken in months. Her voice was calm, steady, and cold. "It's time," she said. Whoever was on the other end didn't respond, but the silence was agreement enough. As dawn crept over the horizon, Fairview would awaken to a new balance of power, one that Leslie had carefully engineered under the guise of a Halloween gala. Tyrell, unaware of the brewing corporate storm, walked Alana home as the streets grew quiet. For him, the night was about honor. For Leslie, it was about strategy. For Ted, it was about survival. Each had faced a different kind of battle, yet they were all bound by the same invisible gate, the one that guards Fairview's secrets. As the episode closed, the camera lingered on Leslie's reflection once more, this time framed by sunrise. She smiled faintly, as if satisfied that the first piece of her grand design had fallen perfectly into place. Ted might recover, Tyrell might heal, but the truth had already changed everything. Beyond the Gates continues to prove that its greatest strength lies not in its mysteries, but in the people willing to risk everything to protect them. Every look, every whisper, every alliance is a move on a board that never stops shifting. And if this episode is any indication, Leslie isn't done playing yet. The real trick was convincing everyone the game was over. Beyond the Gates Daily YA Preview Recap, October 31st. Leslie makes an unexpected move that shakes Ted and Nicole's alliance. The October 31st episode of Beyond the Gates didn't just deliver Halloween tricks. It brought an emotional storm that left everyone questioning loyalties and intentions. Leslie, still fresh from the standoff between Tyrell and Nathan, made her boldest move yet, and the aftershocks reached every corner of Fairview. This wasn't a night about candy and costumes. It was about strategy, heartbreak, and the price of silence. The episode opened with fog curling over the cobblestone streets, the town glowing faintly under lantern light. The annual Halloween charity gala was in full swing, with laughter echoing through Fairview Hall. But underneath the glitz and masks, tension simmered. Ted and Nicole stood together near the punch table, whispering about Tyrell's confrontation the day before. They believed Nathan would retaliate soon, and Ted, ever the fixer, promised to keep things contained. Nicole didn't look convinced. Her eyes drifted toward the door just as Leslie entered, stunning, poised, and carrying the weight of a plan that would append the room. Ted froze. The last time he'd seen her, she'd cornered him with evidence of his betrayal. Tonight, she wore the calm confidence of someone who already knew the next 5 moves in the game. As she moved through the crowd, conversations died mid-sentence. The whispers followed her like shadows. Nicole, sensing trouble, leaned closer to Ted. "What's she doing here?" Ted didn't answer. He couldn't. Leslie's presence wasn't random. It was deliberate. And when she finally reached the podium during the charity auction, the room collectively held its breath. The first few minutes were polite, gratitude, small talk, the expected formalities. But then, Leslie dropped the bomb. She announced a new initiative, a scholarship fund for the victims of Fairview's corporate manipulations. It sounded noble. It sounded generous. But the way her gaze lingered on Ted made it clear this was more than charity. It was a public reckoning. The room erupted in murmurs. Ted's face went pale. Nicole's fingers tightened around her glass. Leslie's speech painted a picture of hidden greed and quiet suffering, without naming names, but everyone in the hall knew exactly who she meant. Her final words were sharp as glass. Some people talk about change, others pay for it. The applause that followed wasn't unanimous. Some clapped in awe, others in discomfort. Ted didn't move. When the lights dimmed for the next auction item, Nicole hissed under her breath, "She's going to ruin everything." Ted didn't respond. He just stared at Leslie, who met his eyes with unflinching calm before walking off stage. Outside, the night air was colder than usual. Leslie stepped onto the balcony, letting the noise fade behind her. For a moment, her expression softened. This wasn't about revenge. It was about truth. What Ted and Nicole had built behind closed doors was rotten, and she wasn't about to let the rot spread unchecked. She'd warned Ted privately. He ignored her. So now she was forcing the town to see what lay beneath their polished facade.